At 70 years old, Mel Gibson reportedly reflected on a part of his life he had rarely spoken about in detail, and it brought attention back to a love story that began long before fame, money, and Hollywood pressure changed everything. This story does not start with red carpets or movie sets, but with two very ordinary young people living very simple lives in Australia, trying to build a future without knowing what was coming next. One of them was a young man who had not yet become a global star, and the other was a hard-working woman named Robyn Moore Gibson, who lived a quiet, disciplined life focused on work, care, and survival in the mid-1970s. Life in Adelaide was not easy or glamorous for many families. Robyn Moore grew up in a working-class environment where stability mattered more than dreams. She chose nursing and dental assisting because it was practical, steady, and respected. Every day was filled with long hours, tired feet, and emotional work with patients who often came in pain or fear. But this kind of life also shaped her deeply. She learned patience, calmness, and emotional strength. She was not someone chasing attention or excitement. She was someone who understood responsibility from a very young age, and that became a core part of her personality later in life. At the same time, Mel Gibson was still far from global fame. He was just another young actor trying to find direction in the early stages of his career. He had talent, but no guarantee of success. When he met Robyn in 1977, he was still living a very simple life, sharing space with others and trying to build small opportunities in acting. There was nothing about him at that time that suggested worldwide fame was coming. That is what makes the beginning of their story feel so real and grounded. It was not a celebrity romance. It was two young people crossing paths during normal life. Their first connection was not dramatic or planned. It grew from simple conversations, shared humor, and time spent talking in everyday situations. One small moment turned into longer conversations, and those conversations slowly built trust. There was no pressure of fame or expectation. Robyn saw him as a person, not a future star, and he saw her as someone steady, intelligent, and emotionally strong. Their bond developed naturally, without noise or attention from the outside world. In those early days, life was still simple enough that love could grow quietly as their relationship developed. Both of them continued working hard in their own ways. Robyn stayed committed to her job, often working long and exhausting shifts. She dealt with real human pain every day, which made her emotionally strong, but also deeply grounded. Mel, on the other hand, was slowly building momentum in acting, taking small roles and hoping for bigger opportunities. There was already a difference forming between their paths, but at that time, they were still close enough to share the same world. They supported each other in small ways, and that support became the foundation of their relationship. Eventually, their connection became serious, and they decided to marry in 1980. At that point, Mel Gibson was still not the global figure he would become. Their wedding was simple and private, not shaped by fame or media attention. It reflected who they were at the time, two people building a life based on trust rather than spotlight. Shortly after marriage, their life began to change rapidly. Mel's career started to grow, and opportunities in film began to increase. This shift created the first real pressure in their relationship, as success does not only bring comfort, it also brings change, distance, and responsibility as the years moved forward. Their family grew quickly, and Robyn became the center of stability in a household that was changing fast. While Mel's career expanded into major film projects, she took on the role of managing home life, raising children, and maintaining structure. This was not a passive role. It required constant energy, discipline, and emotional strength. With each new child and each new film project, the balance between their lives became more complex. Fame brought money and opportunity, but it also brought time away, stress, and pressure that affected the family dynamic in quiet but serious ways. During this period, Robyn also developed her own creative path, moving into voice work and media-related projects. This gave her a separate identity beyond being a wife and mother, even though most of her time was still focused on family responsibilities. She worked in recording studios, handled small projects, and built a quiet but steady career. It was not as visible as Mel's career, but it showed her independence and talent. Even while managing a large household, she continued building something of her own, often in the background and away from public attention. As Mel Gibson's fame grew through major films and global success, the gap between public life and private life became more visible. On one side, there were awards, interviews, and international recognition. On the other side, there was a home filled with children, routines, responsibilities, and emotional labor carried mostly by Robyn. This kind of imbalance is not unusual in high-pressure careers, but it does slowly change relationships over time. The demands of fame often stretch family life in different directions, even when love and commitment still exist. By the time Mel reached the peak of his career with major films and worldwide recognition, their life had already been shaped by decades of both shared effort and silent strain. Robyn had spent years maintaining stability at home, while also building her own quiet career and raising a large family. Mel had built an empire in the film industry, but that success came with intense pressure, long absences, and constant public attention. Over time, their lives became less about shared experiences and more about separate responsibilities running in parallel. Later reflections on their relationship often highlight this contrast. It is not just a story about fame or success, but about how two people evolve differently under pressure. Early love is often simple, but long-term life brings complexity. Careers grow, responsibilities increase, and personal identities change. In their case, what began as a simple connection and shared living space slowly transformed into a life shaped by global fame, family demands, and personal sacrifice on both sides. Looking back, the story is not only about Mel Gibson as a Hollywood figure, but also about Robyn Moore as a strong and independent woman who carried a large part of the family's emotional and practical weight for many years. Their journey reflects how relationships are shaped not just by love at the beginning, but by everything that happens after: the work, the stress, the growth, and the changes that life brings over decades. As the years moved forward, the pressure inside their lives slowly became more visible, even if it was not always shown in public. Fame has a way of changing the rhythm of a household. For Mel Gibson, every new film meant travel, long shooting schedules, and constant public attention. For Robyn Moore Gibson, it meant staying behind to hold everything together at home. This kind of life can look stable from the outside, but inside it often requires constant adjustment, patience, and emotional strength that is not always seen by the world. While Mel's career moved into major Hollywood success, Robyn's life became more focused on structure and family responsibility. Raising children is not a small task, especially in a home where attention is divided between public fame and private life. Each day brought routines that had to be followed no matter what was happening outside the house. School schedules, meals, health, and emotional care for the children all depended heavily on her presence. This kind of responsibility is often invisible in public discussions, but it forms the backbone of family life, especially in high-pressure environments. At the same time, Mel Gibson's growing fame also brought a new world of expectations. Success in Hollywood does not only bring money and recognition, it also brings constant movement, public scrutiny, and less private time. Interviews, filming, promotion tours, and industry demands started to take up more space in his life. Over time, this created distance between his public world and his home life. Even when love and respect remain, distance and time can slowly change how two people experience each other. During these years, Robyn continued to build her own quiet career in voice work, even if it was not widely known to the public. She worked on small projects, recordings, and narration work that allowed her to express creativity while still managing family responsibilities. This balance was not easy. It required switching between roles constantly, mother, worker, and partner, often within the same day. Her voice work became a personal space where she could maintain her own identity, even in a life dominated by family and responsibility. As the children grew, the household became even more active and demanding. With multiple children in the home, daily life required careful organization. Every stage of childhood brought different challenges: school years, teenage growth, and emotional development. Robyn was at the center of all of it, making sure stability remained even when external pressures increased. Meanwhile, Mel Gibson's career continued to rise with larger films and global success, which meant more time away and more separation between professional and personal life. One of the major turning points in Mel's career came with large-scale film projects that brought him international recognition. As his status grew, so did the expectations placed on him by the industry. He was no longer just an actor. He became a major creative figure in Hollywood. This shift changed not only his career, but also the structure of his family life. More responsibility outside the home often means less time inside it, And this is where many long-term relationships begin to feel strained, not from one moment, but from years of gradual change. Through all of this, Robyn remained largely outside the spotlight. She did not seek public attention or media presence. Instead, she focused on keeping life stable for the children and maintaining a sense of normality in a world that was becoming increasingly unusual. This choice shaped how she was seen by the public later, often as a quiet figure in the background. But within the family, her role was central. Stability in a high-pressure environment often depends on someone who is willing to carry that emotional and practical weight. As time passed, the difference between public success and private responsibility became even clearer. Mel Gibson's name continued to grow in global entertainment, while Robyn's contributions remained mostly unseen by the wider world. Yet, both were carrying different forms of pressure. One was dealing with fame, expectations, and constant visibility. The other was dealing with responsibility, consistency, and emotional care within the family. These two worlds were deeply connected, but they were not experienced in the same way in later years. Reflections on their relationship often highlight how long-term love is shaped not only by emotional connection, but also by endurance. It is one thing to build a relationship in youth, when life is simple. It is something very different to maintain that connection through decades of change, pressure, and personal evolution. Careers grow, identities shift, and life responsibilities increase. Over time, even strong relationships must adapt to new realities. The story of Mel Gibson and Robyn Moore is not just about fame or success. It is about how two people who started from a simple and ordinary beginning slowly moved into a life shaped by extraordinary circumstances. It shows how love can exist alongside distance, how support can be given quietly without recognition, and how personal sacrifice often plays a hidden role in public success stories. By the time people look back at their journey, what stands out is not just a rise of a Hollywood figure, but the parallel life of someone who helped build stability behind the scenes. It is a reminder that behind many public careers, there are private stories that are rarely told in full, but are essential to understanding the complete picture of a life shaped by both love and time. As the 1990s continued, life inside the family of Mel Gibson and Robyn Moore Gibson became more complex, not because of a single event, but because of long-term pressure building slowly over time. When success reaches a certain level, it does not stay limited to work. It spreads into every part of daily life: time, privacy, relationships, and even personal identity. That is exactly what happened as Mel Gibson's career reached global recognition. At this stage, Mel was no longer just a successful actor. He had become a major figure in Hollywood. Someone whose decisions influenced large productions and whose presence carried international weight. With this level of fame came constant travel, long filming schedules, and public expectations that never stopped. Even when he was not working on a film, he was still connected to the industry through meetings, promotion, and planning. This kind of life creates a rhythm where home becomes a temporary stop rather than a constant center. For Robyn, this meant her daily reality remained focused on family stability, while the outside world kept expanding around her. She continued managing the household, raising children, and maintaining a sense of normal life, even as everything around her became more extraordinary. With each passing year, the challenge was not just about workload, but about emotional balance. Keeping a family grounded while living in a world of fame requires constant effort, patience, and emotional strength that often goes unrecognized publicly. Their children grew up during this period, each experiencing a version of life shaped by both stability and fame. On one hand, there was a structured home environment. On the other hand, there was a constant presence of public attention surrounding their father. This dual reality can be difficult for any family. It creates a situation where normal life and public life exist side by side, but never fully merge. Robyn's role became central in managing this balance, making sure the children still experience routine, privacy, and emotional support. At the same time, Robyn's own creative work and voice acting continued quietly in the background. She did not pursue fame in the same way as her husband. Instead, she focused on steady work that allowed her to maintain independence while still prioritizing family responsibilities. This choice reflects a different kind of ambition, one that is not driven by public recognition, but by personal expression and stability. Her work included narration, voice roles, and media projects that often went unnoticed by mainstream audiences, but still contributed to her professional identity. As Mel Gibson's career reached its peak with major films and international success, the contrast between their two worlds became more visible. One life was constantly in motion, shaped by scripts, sets, and global attention. The other life was rooted in continuity, shaped by routines, caregiving, and long-term responsibility. Both roles are demanding, but in very different ways. One requires public performance, while the other requires private endurance. Over time, this difference can create emotional distance, even when mutual respect remains. By the late 1990s and early 2000s, Hollywood had fully embraced Mel Gibson as a major director and producer as well as an actor. His success brought financial security and creative freedom, but it also increased pressure. Large projects like Braveheart and later works placed him in a position where expectations were extremely high. Each project carried risk, responsibility, and intense scrutiny from both the industry and the public. While these achievements were celebrated worldwide, the personal cost behind them is often less visible. Long filming schedules mean long absences from home. Creative pressure means constant mental focus on work, even when physically away from it. In such conditions, family life often adapts rather than stays unchanged. Robyn's role in maintaining that structure